Hello, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're gonna wait for more people to join. In the meantime, if you're new to Zoom, we'll be using the Q&A option for questions. So during the presentation or after it, feel free to ask any questions that you have, and please use the Q&A option for that. If you wanna add any comment, you can do that. You can do that using the chat option. This is a webinar style kind of meeting. I know some of you joined us before, so some of you might be familiar with it. We are not using the raise hand option because you won't have the chance to talk, but at the same time you'll be able to communicate via the chat if you want to add any comment or the Q&A for questions. So yeah, let's wait maybe a couple more minutes for more people to join, and then we can start. Thanks. While we still wait for more people to join, I see we have a comment from Robert that we don't give people the chance to speak. The reason why we're doing webinar style in this case is pretty much to respect people's time. It will be, nice to give everybody the chance to talk, but we want to be respectful of everybody's time and take full advantage of that. So that's why we have the Q&A option here for you to ask your questions. And in this case, the chat to enter any other comments. Can you maybe enter that question through the Q&A, and we'll be more than happy to respond. Robert, thank you. So, okay, I guess we can actually start the meeting now. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for joining us tonight. It was a little rainy here. I don't know if it's still raining where you are located right now.
I think it's looking pretty good now. We actually saw a rainbow outside our window, so that's optimistic. And actually, would everyone mind? I think it'd be great to do introductions just of everyone here. Ricardo, do you want to start?
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, thank you again for joining us tonight. My name is Ricardo Solis, and I work for Healthy Right, and we are helping the city of Pittsburgh with their outreach right now.
Awesome. And I'm Cassandra Leopold. I'm the new principal planner in charge of active transportation with the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure.
I'm Sean Stevens. I'm a project engineer in the Traffic Bureau for the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure.
And I'm Eric Boerer, and I work for BikePGH, and I'm just adding an extra hand here.
Awesome. Well, then we'll get started. Hi, everybody. Thank you for attending tonight's meeting on the Brighton Road bike lanes. I can see so far we have 22 people, and we appreciate your feedback and attendance. Like Ricardo said, if you can put any questions you have in the Q&A, then we'll address them after we're done doing our presentation, and of course, follow up with any questions we don't answer or if we don't have time. And so your feedback is crucial, and we appreciate you showing up. Next slide. So I just want to begin our conversation tonight with an overview of our department goals. The Department of Mobility and Infrastructure, otherwise known as DOMI, is one of the city's newest departments. We're roughly 3.5 years old, but we've been really ambitious in what our goals are for mobility and access. Our goals provide the physical mobility necessary to support the social and economic mobility for the residents of the city of Pittsburgh. And so we aim to do that by these 5 goals. Our number 1 goal is always safety. We believe that no one should be seriously injured or killed while using our streets. That is a part of a vision zero kind of mindset that we fully embrace. Second, we care about access. We want to make sure that every resident has access to fresh fruits and vegetables within 20 minutes of their home. This shouldn't require owning or having access to a car to make that trip. Third, we aim to make all trips less than 1 mile easy, enjoyable, and achievable by non-vehicle travel. Not everyone has access to a car, especially right now. We are realizing how important having multimodal options are. So we want to make sure that there are options available for all residents and visitors to the city of Pittsburgh. The 4th goal has to do with finance. We want to make sure that the combined cost of housing, transportation, and basic goods do not exceed 45% of someone's income, regardless of how much money you make. DOMI is committed to making sure that there are affordable transportation options before COVID, but especially now, available for our residents and all visitors. And then finally, we want to make sure that our streets in the city of Pittsburgh reflect the pride and value of our residents. Next slide, thanks. So a lot of DOMI's work, including the conversation we are having tonight, began with the development of our 2020 Bike Plus Master Plan. This document is the first plan of its kind for Pittsburgh in over 20 years. It's a major accomplishment. It proposes over 120 miles of new or improved connections to our bike network, and it also identifies 27 miles of new trails. It supports policies such as improving bike parking, improving connections between riding a bike and transit, and safety increase for that interaction between that last mile and getting where you need to go. Next slide. And so this is one of our former employees working on our Bike Plus plan outreach, who's now moving on to the city planning department. So we did considerable outreach when starting this Bike Plus plan. This took years. As I said, it was one of the first plans we've had in 20 years, so we wanted to put in the investment and time. We received hundreds and hundreds of comments and feedback, and that led to some of the lines you will see coming up on some of the maps. We also provided online maps where folks were able to point out on a line and point to the map and say, there should be improvements here, or you should be connecting this, or I'm afraid to ride here and this is why we should invest in it, or this is an amazing place, you should connect. And so that was all held during a series of open houses in 8 different neighborhoods throughout the city, where really we embraced that feedback and reflected it in the plan. Next slide, thanks. And so this is kind of a snapshot right now where our existing bicycle network is. You can see we have some amazing projects that are already in existence. We have the Allegheny Circle protected bike lanes and Penn Avenue protected bike lanes, and of course our wonderful trails. But the city isn't very well connected. And so the goal of the Bike Plus plan is to make sure, regardless of where your destination is in the city, that you can get there safely and comfortably, regardless of your age or ability, or if you're using 2 wheels or 3. And then that go next slide, or is that the proposed? I believe it is. Oh yes, look at that connections. Okay, and so this is what we hope to see for the city of Pittsburgh in the future. This is the proposed Bike Plus plan network map that shows over 120 miles of improved connections. So the plan identifies where gaps are in the network and then makes those recommendations for specific routes, improving connectivity, and really making sure that we are connecting to existing infrastructure. And again, this is all from recommendations from residents over a series of years that we're really investing in ways to further connect the city and improve all the options we have for mobility. And then I think specifically for the Brighton Road project, we wanted to show this specific highlight from the Bike Plus plan. This is obviously north side and it highlights Brighton. There are recommendations and vision for Brighton. Obviously it's a 10+ year plan. But you can see there by the dotted line connecting to existing infrastructure on Brighton that there's community interest in seeing that connection fleshed out. And so as we move forward in our planning initiatives, that is something we are very much keeping in mind. And there are also signs and mentions of investment for Brighton in the Allegheny West Neighborhood Rejuvenation Plan. And so this is just a little bit of an overview of the possible Bike Plus facility types. The plan does say, you know, we're going to maybe recommend lines here or there, but they're lines on a map. Have not been fleshed out to the full capacity that they can be. It just simply says that there's a bike connection that is needed here and recommended by the community. And so that's why we do this planning process and where we are today, especially with talking about designs. So you can see examples as in that top left corner. That is a shared use path or trail. That is the gold standard premier option that we like seeing. It's a multi-use path. It's completely separated from automobile traffic. And generally all cyclists, regardless of their age or ability, are comfortable using that kind of infrastructure. But as you see, we have many items in our toolkit. And so as you're looking across from right and all the way to the bottom, you have many other solutions that we call lighter touch solutions. And so you can see we have items such as protected bike lanes, which provides a physical barrier, a buffered bike lane, which has a painted buffer as a barrier, and then of course a typical bike lane, which many of you are familiar with seeing in the city. We also have additional sharrows, which are shared lane markings that allow drivers and cyclists to share the road. And then in the bottom right, you see a snapshot of a neighbor wave. And so all of these are different options that DOMI is using these tools to improve our bike connections. And then finally, I want to talk a little bit, this is our new Move Forward PGH campaign, although not too new now, we've been doing this for a little while, is our brand for the implementation of the Bike Plus plan expansion. This talks about what we'll be doing with the rapid implementation of bike infrastructure. And this brand and campaign is of course a collaboration. It is foremost a city project. That's why I'm here and our engineers are here, but we also have our partners that are here tonight presenting with us. They're helping us along the way. And of course, that was Ricardo, who you met, and Eric with Bike Pittsburgh and Healthy Ride. We partner with them to expand our reach and do more through a combination with the grant funding that we have received. This allows us to come talk to communities, improve the ways that we are communicating, and really just reach out to the community as best as humanly possible. So please, you can go to Move Forward. There's links going to be shared throughout the meeting and also on the site, but you can get updates on this project and other projects coming through DOMI. And we're really excited about the interactive process that we'll be developing to go along with the Move Forward campaign. And so with the Brighton Road Bike Lane project, we're further along in our outreach process. We're in the in-between phase of design and construction. We did start with planning efforts. These were conversations with communities. Oh, sorry, one second, my screen just went dark. Sorry, these are conversations with communities that recommended lines on the Bike Plus plan map. And then we had held public meetings where we took that feedback from the community, which helped launch this initial project. And we've now moved into obviously the design phase. This is one of our second meetings. And so tonight we're going to share with you the outreaches that were done, updated designs, and then obviously anything that incorporates the feedback from the community. And our final goal is to make it through to construction. All right, next slide. And sorry, I apologize. There we go. And so I lost track of my image here. So we initially had, this is our general timeline for the Brighton Road project. On June 9th, we had the initial presentation to the Allegheny West Civic Council. On June 23rd, we did the Brighton Road public meeting. On July 1st, we held a meeting with the Community College of Allegheny County, their Chief Facilities Officer and staff. And now we're having our second public meeting. So we want to do that follow-up. We want to share designs and continue to get that feedback and then ultimately move on to construction. And then this slide just goes over the general budget for our Move Forward projects. This general overview shows that obviously the Bike Plus plan initially has funding from our capital city budget. We did receive a larger grant for the Move Forward program campaign with the support of over $2 million. And then you can see for planning, And construction, again, that is city operation, excuse me, that's city budget, one for operating and capital budget. And then of course, anything for project design as we're moving forward, talking about designs tonight, was also funded by the grant. And then I will hand it over now to Ricardo.
Thank you, Cassandra. So yeah, I just noticed there's a couple more people joining the meeting. Remember that this is a webinar style meeting, so we won't be allowing people to speak. So we also won't be allowing the raise hand option, but you can always ask your questions through the Q&A option. And also, if you want to enter any comment, please use the chat. If you want to just say hi, just say your name so your neighbors know who you are, that'll be great. We'll be happy for that. And yeah, just ask any questions that you have through the presentation, and we'll be sure to answer them at the end. I know we have a couple that need to be answered, but yeah, thank you. So I'm gonna let Sean speak.
Hi, for the folks that joined, again, I'm Sean Stevens, project engineer with DOMI's Traffic Bureau. And those that might have participated in previous community meetings, I probably look familiar, and I probably talked to a number of you already. In these next couple of slides will look and sound familiar, as I'm sure some of the previous ones did, but we do have an updated design for the project after hearing community feedback and engaging with stakeholders. And I will highlight these changes throughout the presentation. Next slide, please. So again, a bit of background on this project, excuse me, and how it came to be. So the Allegheny West Neighborhood Rejuvenation Plan initially identified a block of Brighton Road. Excuse me, I have to take a sip of water. Initially identified a block of Brighton Road for a road diet to slow traffic, increase safety, and create more functional uses of the roadway. Excuse me. And then this corridor was identified, as Cassandra mentioned, in the city's Bike Plus plan as a north-south connector for the bike network. So we have 2 blocks of Brighton Road from Ridge Avenue to North Avenue as a part of this initial phase. And the depiction on the left here shows a cross-section of the current layout with the 4 travel lanes in each direction. Next slide, please. Existing conditions. So currently Brighton Road is a 2-way street with parking from Ridge Avenue to Western Avenue. And then from Western to North, it continues to be a 2-way street. However, with 2 travel lanes in each direction and no parking. The lane widths on this block are rather wide, which does create a condition that has been known to increase speeding. And speeding in this area was actually identified in the neighborhood plan as well. And then the map on the right shows the existing bike network in green. There are currently bike lanes along West Ohio Street and Allegheny Commons Park, and the cycle track around Allegheny Circle. Next slide, please. So what we are proposing is restriping these 2 blocks of Brighton Road, reducing travel lanes from 4 to 2, as well as adding to the bike network. So this project is part road diet for 1 block between North Avenue and Western Avenue. And again, a road diet slows traffic, increases safety, and provides more room for other functions along the corridor. And these other functions we propose adding is parking between Western and North, and installing bike facilities. And I'll also speak to the effectiveness of road diets in the upcoming slide as well. But our updated design now calls for parking protected bike lanes on the eastern park side fronting Allegheny Commons Park. So this is just one of the updates to our plan that we've made since the last community meeting, and I'll explain a bit more in detail the rationale behind that decision in upcoming slides. And then on the other opposite side of the roadway, along the western residential side, would be a buffered bike lane. And then, again, as shown on the map, these bike facilities would connect to the existing bike network and build upon it. And this project would provide safer bike access to the park, business district along Western Avenue, and CCAC. Next slide, please. So a bit of information and background about road diets. A road diet is one of our tools from our traffic calming toolkit. And as I mentioned previously, it essentially removes travel lanes from a roadway and utilizes remaining space for other uses to increase safety and slow vehicular traffic. We've installed a few road diets throughout the city. One example is Broad Street and East Liberty, which is actually pictured here on the right. This was completed in 2019 and is very similar to Brighton Road in that it was previously a 4-lane roadway, and we could reduce the travel lanes and able to add parking and bike lanes through the road diet. And then there are 2 real metrics in measuring effectiveness of road diets: that's speed and crash data. So as a result of the road diet along Broad Street, we saw a near 10% reduction in motorist speeding and a 5-mile-per-hour reduction in median speed. And so while 5 miles per hour does not seem like very much of a reduction, I'd like to point out that once cars reach a certain speed, just above 20 miles per hour, they rapidly become more deadly for bicyclists and especially pedestrians. According to a AAA Safety Foundation study, a pedestrian is nearly 70% more likely to be killed if they're struck by a vehicle traveling at 30 miles per hour versus 25 miles per hour. And that figure can be even higher for elderly populations. So these slight reductions in speed really can be a matter of life and death. And so that, among other reasons, is why road diets are an effective tool and helps us reach DOMI's goal that no one dies or seriously injured traveling on our city streets. And then regarding crash data, we don't have any for Broad Street just yet because it is so new and data is not yet available to us. But Federal Highway Administration studies show that crash reductions can be anywhere from 19 to 47% on an undivided 4-lane roadway, just like the section of Brighton Road. And these vary for a number of reasons, such as length of corridor, average daily traffic, prevailing speeds, and et cetera. Next slide, please. And then a bit of background about parking protected bike lanes before we dive into the updated plans, because they are rather new to the city of Pittsburgh, and I'm sure some of you folks have heard this already. But to recap, they are one of the safer forms of bike lanes for cyclists and are rather low cost and durable. There are 2 renderings here on the right-hand side that show how they work. So from the edge of curb, you have the bike lane itself, a painted buffer, which is that hatched out area, and that's otherwise known as the door zone. And that's so people can enter and exit a parked vehicle. And then you have the parking lane itself, and then thereafter the travel lane and what other facilities may be on this roadway. And then some other benefits include it dedicates a protected space for cyclists in order to improve comfort and safety. It eliminates risk and fear of collisions with vehicles and reduces the risk of dooring compared to a standard bike lane. And dooring is when drivers open their car without looking and an unsuspecting approaching bicyclist doesn't have enough time to react, striking the door, injuring themselves, or potentially injuring the driver exiting their parked vehicle. It prevents double parking in a bike lane. It has a rather low implementation cost by installing new pavement markings and making use of existing pavement. And it is more attractive for cyclists of all levels, ages, and ability, which being near the park is an added advantage. Next slide, please. So we're going to start discussing the updated layout, and I'll highlight again the differences from what was presented at the previous meeting. And also, just to make this a little bit easier, we've added an aerial background to provide, hopefully provide better context and clarity. Next slide, please. So we'll start at Brighton Road and Ridge Avenue near CCAC and then work our way north. So our updated design now shows the parking protected bike lane on the eastern park side. And we came to that decision after engaging with stakeholders and hearing community feedback we switched the location of this facility to maintain more parking along the corridor without having to sacrifice the safety and protection of cyclists. And since there are so many adjoining streets and driveway entrances along the residential side of the street, we are able to maintain more parking overall. The travel lane configuration, which is one lane in each direction, would remain the same as today, and a buffered bike lane would be installed on the western residential side. And as shown with this parking protected bike lane along the park side, we can maintain 12 parking spaces between Ridge and Lincoln. And this is represented as the thick blue line there. And we do plan on designating these as residential permanent parking spaces. Next slide, please. So up to the intersection with Western Avenue, the travel lane configuration still remains the same. The buffered bike lane on the residential side continues. And then it is planned to maintain 11 of the of the pay parking spaces between Lincoln and Western on the park side with, again, the installation of the parking protected bike lane. And this is represented by the thick blue line. Another design change, thanks to community feedback from the last meeting and some of the surveys that were submitted. Our plan now includes several bike boxes to facilitate left-hand turns to and from bike lanes at the West Ohio Street intersection. And so after crossing through this signalized intersection, this is where the road diet begins. The travel lanes are reduced to one lane in each direction to slow traffic, increase safety, and return this block to a more residential neighborhood street that it can and really should be. And we can also provide an additional 10 pay parking spaces between Western and Beach, which is represented by the orange line there. Next slide, please. So final sheet showing the intersection of North Avenue and Brighton Road. The Parkside bike lane ends with the mixing zone to shift bicyclists to the left-hand side of the right turn only lane. And this mixing zone is painted in green to provide additional warning for both motorists and cyclists that this is a conflict mixing zone. And appropriate signage would also be installed there. And then we also, again, have a bike box painted in green, which would be installed to facilitate those left turns onto North Avenue. And then for users approaching North Avenue going south on Brighton, the lanes would be adjusted a bit to reduce any awkward lane shift through the intersection. A double dashed yellow extension, which is shown there right through the intersection itself, can provide directional cues. And further, we would place bollards or flex posts at the beginning of the southbound bike lane. And this would just act as a vertical element to provide additional warning and directional cues for drivers and cyclists. Next slide, please. Background data on some of the information and data to support these decisions. PennDOT's Pennsylvania Crash Information Tool showed that there were 24 reported crashes between 2013 and 2018. So over that 5-year period, there were those 24 crashes. 50% resulted in injuries, and then one included a pedestrian. And we should note that some accidents do go unreported, and further, these figures don't include near misses or close calls, and those can be particularly hard to generate and gather. Based off of PennDOT data, the annual average daily traffic, or ADT, on this corridor is nearly 4,000 vehicles per day. So this is in both directions. So it's approximately 2,000 vehicles per day each way. And based off of that volume, this corridor is a good candidate for a road diet without affecting efficiency. Per Federal Highway Administration guidance, a road diet can be implemented on roads with an ADT up to 20,000 vehicles per day. Parking. So there are approximately 32 legal parking spaces along Brighton Road between Ridge and Western. A large majority is paid parking. However, there is a section of permit area parking. And so with our updated design and hearing community feedback, this new design can provide 33 parking spaces in total, with plans for 21 to be paid parking and 12 to be residential permit parking. So this is actually a net increase of 1 parking space overall. And then the rendering here on the right has been updated, and that shows the depiction of the typical cross section of the new proposed layout looking north. So like picture yourself at CCAC, you know, Brighton Road at CCAC looking uphill towards Western or north. And this shows, you know, the parking protected bike lane, the 2 travel lanes in each direction, with the buffered bike lane now being on the residential side. Next slide, I think that is it. So with that, I think we'll, Ricardo or Cassandra, do you want to add anything else before we start the Q&A?
I think outside of everything you covered, I think we're good to open up to Q&A, and just remind the group that anything that we cannot answer today, just due to time constraints, that we will be following up, and that you're able to go to Move Forward PGH to then look at any of the comments, the updates, and have access to this presentation. And you can follow up with us at any time.
Yeah, I will just add, just make sure that, yeah, your question is in like a question format, so we don't think it's a comment. But yeah, ask any questions through the Q&A option, and you can add more comments on the chat.
Okay, well, I'll start with the first question. It's from Robert. It's a bit of a comment, but I think it can be summed up with his question, which is, what is the purpose of adding parking to the 900 block of Brighton?
Since we plan to eliminate parking originally with the parking protected bike lane shown on the residential side, we weren't going to be able to maintain as many spots. And listening to community feedback from multiple residents, folks wanted the ability to maintain residential permit parking and pay parking. Thus, with this new and improved design, we can actually provide a net increase of 1 parking space with an overall of 33. So that's the rationale behind adding parking on the 900 block.
Okay. He also has a question. So I'm going to parse it from the comment. Basically, he's concerned about the right turn lane at Brighton and Western, and whether it will cause significant traffic backups. So I wonder if you can speak to that.
Yeah, we definitely were aware of this concern with speaking to residents, and Mr. Malikoff, I believe I spoke to you a couple times about this, either via email or in person once. But I am working with our traffic division head to respond to the request for the impact to removing that right-hand turn lane. So we're going to be putting all of this together in the form of a memo outlining the warrant to remove it. And we'll definitely be responding to that concern, certainly.
Okay.
And sorry, I'll follow up.
Sorry,
I apologize. I'm putting in, we have an updated survey link for continued information. So I will be putting the survey form link. So if we have additional comments that we want to receive, that will be available in the chat. My apologies for not including it sooner.
And one more thing I wanted to add to answer the question. If problems do arise after the installation, one of the things that we can do is evaluate the traffic signal timings along the whole corridor to alleviate any backup or buildup that might occur as well. So that's something we're actively aware of and we'll be keeping tabs on.
Yeah, absolutely. We are always open to evaluation, and especially with these Move Forward projects, that's something that we can offer.
Okay. The next question is a comment about the same intersection at Brighton and Western, but about pedestrians. So in the plans, will there be an addition of a pedestrian crosswalk signal at Brighton and Western? This is from Jenna.
So with this current plan, we don't have any upgrades to signals themselves. We can easily change timings just through computer programming, but we don't have any inclusion of, I don't recall if there's pedestrian signal heads at this intersection. I don't think there are because it's one of the older ones. And so I also believe that this might be a capital budget request to upgrade this signal, but the budget is still being ironed out. And so I'm not sure if we will have the resources to upgrade that signal. But we are exploring the idea of at least updating the crosswalks themselves, the painted crosswalks. Instead of having those like parallel lines, they would be updated to the piano key style or zebra style, as some folks call them, and they're high visibility and just makes for a better pedestrian experience and helps visually impaired people cross easier as well.
Maybe you can add how will the lane diet also help pedestrians?
Hey guys, sorry to interrupt. I'm gonna actually make everybody able to speak since we have been getting a message from Director Riggs that we should actually switch to an open dialogue. So I'm just gonna let you guys, so you can keep answering the question. I'm just gonna change that format here for a sec.
Okay, so should I move on to the next question then? Or? Yeah. Okay. Well, this one is from an anonymous Allegheny West resident. Love that we are finally making Brighton safer. I'm disappointed that we are changing the plan to just accommodate a few more unnecessary parking spots. Can we at least continue the bike lane all the way to Ridge and eliminate the turn lane so that cyclists and vehicles don't have to merge at the intersection?
Yeah, so at Ridge Avenue, at the intersection of Brighton and Ridge, there is a bus stop there. And so in order for the Port Authority buses to pull to the curb to accommodate folks with wheelchairs, they need to be able to pull to the curb to drop the ramp. So that has to be a mixing zone of sort, and we can't have a dedicated facility for bikes or a protected facility for bikes at that intersection at this time.
Okay. Should I continue with the questions, Ricardo?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so I can combine the next two, again from Robert and then another one from Douglas. Just they want a review of the residential parking, and also Robert's asking about the metered parking on Brighton. So who's asked for the metered parking on Brighton?
Is it the number of spaces that we're allocating, or what's the direct question is who in the community has asked for metered parking on Brighton? And then the follow-up question is from Douglas is, can you please review the residential parking again? So sure. I just thought I'd combine the two together. Yeah, I'm not going to name any names, but we have received feedback about being able to maintain metered parking along this corridor.
Okay. What year you are on? Are they just readers? Mm-hmm.
I just allowed everybody to be able to use the microphone. Maybe I will ask everybody to turn off their microphone at the moment and then maybe turn it on when they're allowed to speak. Thank you.
And then to answer the question about residential parking, Ricardo, is there any way we could go back in the presentation to when stop?
I don't think you can ask them to survey because then they just send a piece of paper.
How far do you want to go back?
Yeah, keep going. Yeah, oh, too far. Yeah,
Could
right
we
there.
have more metered, unmetered than metered? We need residential permit parking the most, in my opinion.
Oh, they're allowing somebody to talk.
Yeah.
So currently, right now, there are actually 7 residential permit parking spots along the section of Brighton, and we are actually increasing the amount to 12. So we are providing additional residential permit parking spaces.
And I understand, but there's still more that are metered than unmetered, correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, so couldn't it be even versus that there are more metered than the residential permit, because that's what we need more of in the neighborhood. And we're getting impacted here by this. This will be something that there will be, you know, something we have to work through. And you're taking, this would be a plus then that would help the residents here. Because I think it's going to be a lot of backed up traffic. I think it's going to be hard for us to pull out onto Brighton to go and do errands. It's going to be hard to even walk because there's going to be so many cars backed up, because this has happened before with the traffic trying to get from Western Avenue to North Avenue. And I also, my name's Mary, I also had made a comment that if you turn that into a stop sign instead of a stop light, then people could continue, you know, to stop and then go. Plus that right-hand turn from West North Avenue onto Brighton, people don't stop there at all. They just merge in. So that should be eliminated and made a stop sign so cars have to stop. That's my thinking.
There's cold water down there if you want one of those. Huh? Yeah.
Just follow-up question for the traffic backup outside of usual peak times. Have you noticed when there is it just consistent for things backing up, or is it for usual peak traffic times?
My picture showed up there. My outline.
It's usually at, you know, from 3 o'clock to maybe 7 and in the mornings, but it can be through the day depending on, you know, just you know, conditions. But it's usually from like 3:30 to 7 on, you know, during COVID, this is not a good time to be testing this, but in the past, that has been a problem where traffic gets backed up all the way through, you know, from Western, making the turn onto Brighton Road, and then the right-hand turn onto West North Avenue. They can't get through the lights.
I was just curious when we were talking about the average daily traffic, just where those peak hours were, just so that's good to know.
The peak hours.
All right, we have Robert that raised his hand. Robert, do you want to turn on your mic?
Now, how do you do that?
Well, we can hear whoever's talking right now. We can hear you.
Back in, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Back in 2016, when this issue first started, I did a traffic study, an informal traffic study. And when there was only one lane of traffic going south on the 900 block of Brighton and one lane of traffic going north on the 900 block of Brighton, the traffic from Western to North was backed all the way up. Now, yesterday I was out, we live on Brighton. I was out there watching traffic while I was doing some gardening. And at times there were 10 cars all together, 5 in the right-hand turn lane and 5 in the straight lane. If it had only been one lane, there would have been 10 cars lined up, which would have lined the traffic up from Western back to Beach.
No bridge.
And the bridge in the park is West Ohio Street Bridge is not open, so traffic is going to pick up when it opens, and there will be left-hand turning traffic. About 2/3 of the traffic traveling south on Brighton on the 900 block makes a right turn onto Western. So when they put the right turn lane in, which was very recently, maybe a year or two ago, it really alleviated that backup. People making right turns can come right down and stop for the red light and then make their turn without waiting for people who are going straight or making left-hand turns. Now, why can't this right turn lane be included in the plan?
There's a park.
And Sean, maybe you can, I guess, I mean, it's good to know the traffic patterns of this, though. I appreciate the feedback as we don't know as much as people who are living near the street, on the street, and utilizing this area near the community college. So I appreciate the feedback and taking notes.
Yeah, as I mentioned before, we are evaluating the warrant for a right-hand turn lane, and I'm working with the traffic division head to write up a memo explaining the rationale behind removing it, and provide some of the background material and data. And again, I want to further mention that if needed, we can retime the signals to alleviate any of those backups, and so that can also be in conjunction with installation of these facilities as well, coordinated with our traffic shop.
Yeah, so if you want to ask more questions, please use the raise hand option and you'll be able to ask that live. Do we have more questions on the queue in the meantime?
Yeah, we do. I'll ask the next one. Was any consideration given to pedestrian crossing into the park from beach? That was from Martha.
Yeah, Ricardo, can you go to sheet 3 of 3, I think? Yeah, so this shows the intersection of Beach and Brighton. And one of the reasons why we are not proposing a crosswalk here, and we did consider it, was this is within 300 feet of a signalized intersection. And so it is safer for pedestrians to cross at a signalized intersection rather than one that is uncontrolled. And that's what it would be at Beach and Brighton. So that's the rationale behind.
And I can also add that the sight lines, the sight distances are not ideal due to the bridge, which makes it a concern, obviously, on an ADA level and anybody trying to be seen safely. So that also ties into part of the reasoning there.
Okay, well, I'll ask another one. This is from Mary. Have you looked at the flow of traffic at Brighton and North, which will funnel cars west on North to get to Route 65?
So North Avenue is the main artery through the north side, volume-wise, and that's how it acts and how it should be. And so, with a part of this plan is to, with the road diet, is to eliminate any unnecessary travel through the corridor. This is a residential street. It is zoned residential and should look like one and act like one. And so we're trying to return it to the residents and to make it a safe place for all users.
Okay. Is there any, I'll just keep going. From Robin, how do you slow down the left turn from Western onto Brighton? The cars traveling from Western to Brighton typically ignore pedestrian or bike crossings. Brighton from the Commons.
Ricardo, can you go to sheet 2 of 3? And then Eric, I'm sorry, can you repeat that question again?
Sorry.
Eric,
Eric,
yeah, I found it.
Okay.
How do you slow down the left turn from Western onto Brighton? The cars traveling from Western to Brighton typically ignore pedestrian or bike crossings from Brighton to the Commons.
Yeah, so our intent, and this is not shown on the drawing yet, but our intent is to improve the crosswalks here to those high visibility crosswalks. So motorists realize that this is a pedestrian crossing, and it is law for them to yield to a pedestrian in a crosswalk. So motorists, need to follow the law, and yeah.
We have some other raised hand. I'm gonna unmute Robert so they can speak.
Okay, that's us.
Okay, that's me.
Wait, here we
again.
go.
Oh, we can hear you. You're good.
Okay, that's me again. As far as that left turn from Western onto Brighton, A left turn signal might work. That's a recommendation we can make, which will slow the traffic down. A question about future plans. On your website, you have future bike lanes along West North Avenue. Is that correct? Going west into Manchester?
I believe I have, I want to verify for our, let's see, and that's on our DOMI proposed site. Is that our?
So, yeah, Western Avenue is shown as a bike route on the Bike Plus
Not
plan.
Western,
However,
I'm
it's,
sorry, I mean North Avenue.
I didn't catch that, I'm sorry.
Sorry, could you repeat that one more time?
Right, on your future plans for.
Yes, yes, on the proposed Bike Plus plan map, yes.
You show bike lanes going across North Avenue and into Manchester. Is that correct?
Yes, those are also, I mean, as those lines go, those are just recommendations. Those are things that, you know, they're saying that those are really preferred and ideal connections referenced by the community, but we don't have those fleshed out. Those are things that were researched and provided as feedback. And so that's why it was in the plan as it was supported by the community. But as to having in-depth ideas for those to say that we would put in, say, bike lanes or anything else, those are just future plans.
All right, I would recommend that if you are contemplating doing that, you meet with the property owners along West North Avenue first and see what their ideas were.
Absolutely.
About their recommendations, because they just may lose parking spaces along West North.
Absolutely. Any of the proposed lines on those maps, we are working very diligently, not only to work out initially stakeholder meetings to get to the community groups, faith-based organizations, and schools in the area, and anybody else who can reach out to residents, we initially reach out to them, but then absolutely people on and near any proposed project, we want to reach out to the residents, not just, you know, virtually like we're doing now, unfortunately due to COVID, but also having, you know, posters, mailers. If we're able to go back to face-to-face engagement, that would be ideal for us, but definitely reaching out to those resident and property owners and renters in the area are always key with our projects, and we value hearing that.
You didn't do that on Brighton Road. Before you even drew up these plans, you never came to the property owners along Brighton Road and asked for our recommendations. You had
we initially reached out to the Allegheny West Civic Council
and came to us.
I think, Ricardo, can you go back to the slide that showed the outreach? Initially, we did reach out to the Allegheny West Council, and then I apologize. I am very, very new, so I wasn't there for.
Talking about individual property owners that are going to be impacted.
Right. I would say, unfortunately, that timeline was also deeply compounded by COVID, and that impacted a lot of our face-to-face outreach. Looking at the timeline right now, you can see we had a huge impact there. I can also speak to the capacity at the department. My position was not filled. We were starting certain things. There were things that found our hands significantly in ways that's why we are doing this outreach as much as we can now. And definitely why we're holding these meetings to continue to have the conversation as we want so desperately to be out engaging with the public. But as you can see, I mean, our timeline showing from June 9th to now, it's quite a difficult time to do face-to-face and talk to the property owners. I agree. And I think we're trying to find ways now to do field visits that are safe, but also with minimal numbers. We're trying to find ways to increase our mailers and do engagement in different ways with increased interactivity. So we're definitely trying to work with those constraints, but your feedback is absolutely valid.
Thanks, Cassandra. We have another person raising their hand, Mary. So I'm gonna ask Mary to unmute herself.
I'm actually Mary's neighbor, Carol. I live next door on West North. The question about the bike lanes on West North, one, there is a church at the corner of West North and Allegheny Avenue. There's another church at the corner of Beach and Allegheny Avenue. So on Sundays, there's a lot of parking issues. Not only the residents go through a challenge on Sundays because of church services, people coming to those churches, whether it's for mass or other events. So to put in a bike lane and take off the only on-street parking that the residents have, and there's very limited, if none, parking for a lot of the residents in our section. What's the consideration for parking, not only for the influx of parking need based upon special events? We also get a lot of issues because of Steeler traffic and Steeler parking. And then, so our parking is limited from that perspective. And then to put in a bike lane, you're now permanently limiting parking options for neighbors, or for residents on a section of West North. Has that been taken into any consideration?
Cassandra, I'll take this one. As far as the bike network that you see in our Bike Plus plan with the dashed lines showing the bike network on North and Western, just because there's a dashed line doesn't mean we're going to install bike lanes. It's just, this is a part of the bike network. And so there's different levels of protection and dedicated facilities for cyclists. Ricardo, can you go back to the one slide that shows all the different types, please?
For the Bike Plus plan?
Yeah, right there. Yeah. So these are the, oh, nope, forward one. Right there, thank you. So these are the different types of facilities, and they range from a fully shared use path to just a shared travel lane between bikes and cars. So just because there's a line on the map doesn't mean it's all going to have dedicated bike lanes. It could be a shared scenario, or just
so if it's, sorry, but if it's shared or
Yes.
dedicated, regardless, there's an issue with on-street parking for the residents on that section of West North, right?
If it's shared,
I'm going to
there
get
is
a
no-
ticket if I park in a bike lane.
If it's a shared scenario with the sharrows, there is no legal parking removal for those types of facilities at all.
Correct, right.
Yeah.
All right, we're running out of time. There's one more person that raised their hand. Before we let that person speak, I just want to remind everybody that there's still more questions that haven't been answered yet. We'll totally follow up with that. We'll send you an email, hopefully tomorrow, with the recording of the meeting and also the presentation for you to have. And also you'll be getting like a frequently asked questions on an email as well. So we have Anne. I'm gonna ask Anne to unmute themselves.
Oh, and in the meantime, I did re-put in the link for the survey for feedback, just since we're wrapping up, and I know there has to be more questions, just that's available, and we do review each question in that form. So that is, again, available in the chat.
Go ahead, Anne.
Thank you. Thank you. And actually, that's my question. I was wondering, and I apologize if you said this already and I missed it, but can we see a summary or somehow all the comments and feedback that you've received so far?
Yeah, there for the Move Forward pgh.org site, that provides a summary of everything. It includes this presentation, it includes a summary of feedback, it has the images here. So that is your kind of one-stop shop to have everything you would need there. And then we do provide a summary of those questions in the Excel. We don't show names, we don't show the exact Excel just to protect everyone's privacy. Obviously, we don't want to share everyone's information, but we do provide summaries on that site, and that's also in the chat.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we will update that after this meeting, and you'll be able to see at least the video and the presentation tomorrow and the frequently asked questions hopefully soon, but you'll get an email as well to remind you about that. And I guess we could also let John ask his last question before we wrap up.
Thank you, Ricardo. Following up on Carol's observation 2 comments ago regarding the sharrows, the extensions that would come off of Brighton Road, the current project area that would extend onto West North Avenue, linking it to Allegheny, onto Ridge Avenue, linking it to Allegheny, and also the extensions that would go on Brighton Road from North Avenue up to California Avenue. Each of those streets, if you were to do anything more than Sharrows, would require removing the current parking lane that is on those streets. And all three of those streets have issues if you were to take a dedicated bike lane down those areas. Now, we understand from Cassandra that there are other alternatives like the Sharrows, for example, but if in fact you can only do Sharrows on Brighton Road between North Avenue and California Avenue, on North Avenue between Brighton and Pennsylvania and Allegheny, and on Ridge between Brighton and Allegheny, then what's the point of doing dedicated bike lanes in these 2 blocks of Brighton Road? The only thing that those dedicated lanes on these 2 blocks would serve are dedicated lanes if you were able to establish them on the 3 sections of Ridge, North, and Brighton that I just outlined. And I think it's fair to say that the community doubts that you would be able to establish anything more than Sharrows on those 3 streets. So you're going to have Sharrows leading into 2 blocks of dedicated bike lanes where right now the current flow seems to be adequate, and you could do Sharrows on those 2 blocks and have far less impact on the surrounding community.
Thank you, John.
I can only speak for one. Absolutely, there are several tools that we can use for those side streets. Nothing is decided. I would say, obviously, community feedback would determine what we would put in for, or even make recommendations of, for facility type for the for Brighton and California and the other roads that would lead into these main streets. I would say if we have the community college accessing these main roads, that speaks to high use. But I would imagine I want to refer to Sean, since he is the designer for this, to speak more to it.
The Brighton Road is a north-south connector as a part of the bike network, and we're just trying to build upon the existing network itself. And so this is, the first initial phase. Brighton Road has dedicated bike lanes along, I think it's 2.1 miles into the hills. And so, eventually we would like to close that gap. And, there's further planning and outreach that needs to be taken. And so it remains to be seen what will close the gap.
And I apologize, I failed to mention, right, if we have existing, usually it is better to have continuity of the bicycle facility types, since there is existing facilities on Brighton. We'd want to continue that, because then it becomes more unsafe to then go, as you're indicating, from different type to different type. If you can have that continuous corridor, you reduce speeding, you reduce collisions, and you continue that safe barrier for cyclists and even ultimately pedestrians engaging at those intersections, because those traffic calming modifications have been made. So that is part of the reason we would be making these recommendations.
All right, I guess that's it pretty much. I just want to comment on somebody comment on the chat that they don't want to be added to an email list. When I was referring to send you an email, it was pretty much just for all the questions for this meeting specifically. So you won't be added to any email list, just so you know. And again, I will be updating that the Move Forward website with the video and the presentation tomorrow. I'll send you that email as well. And yeah, sorry again for all the questions that we were not able to answer right now, but yeah, you'll receive an answer via email for sure. And thank you, Cassandra, Sean, and Eric for the presentation.
Absolutely. Thank you everyone for showing up today and for such good questions. We appreciate your time.
Yeah, everybody have a great night.
Have a good night.